John, so this is our first conversation, I guess, in Dell for All, and trying to take stock of what's changed, I guess, over the last fortnight. No, so I was just wondering what's changed for Open University that at face value, I would say is marvelously equipped for migrating to online.
So yeah, so let me talk about the Open University first, where we are a distance teaching university. We teach at scale. We have 175,000 students. We actually teach blended, so partly online, part not. But the interesting thing that I saw was there was a little reduction, not much, but then one evening our Prime Minister Boris Johnson made an announcement that he wanted to encourage everyone to work at home they possibly could. So it wasn't legal, but just encouraged. And basically the next day, the OU campus started to empty. So from the next day, out of my lab of 80 people, only one person was left. And it took maybe 2 full days for the OU campus. You cannot go onto it now unless you pre-arrange with the one of 3 people in my faculty and security. So we are a university which is teaching 175,000 students, where the students are at home and we're at home as well. There are some adjustments you can imagine to some of the exams. We have some physical summer schools that have been moved, but for the most part, and I don't often say this, I've been very impressed about the way that we're a fully functioning university, 4,000 staff, which would be normally central, 8,000 other staff, and everything is working pretty fine. So no less is that our main conversations is about, and I think it's a general to others, is about staff and student well-being.
Yeah. I think my experience has been very different because, as you know, I still teach in a bricks and mortar university, but the speed happened the same way. In a way, we were anticipating it. The head of department has asthma, so he could actually he actually called me to his office, and I happened to be teaching that day. I was having some student tutorials, and he said, "We got to get the hell out of here." And literally by the time I got back home, and the announcement came and said, we're going to close for a week or whatever it was, and we're going to see how it goes. And I guess what I've seen is a number of waves, a wave of panic from people who had never used these kind of tools. I mean, you and I are using Zoom right now.
Yeah.
People in the academy have been teaching there for years and had no idea as to, what to do, literally what to do. Some people were paralyzed. And then as this thing started sinking in, it became a case of, and I think it was very, very humbling to see it. The chat rooms opened up, and there was a hell of a lot of peer learning going on, as those who knew what to do, had an idea what to do, started helping those who didn't know what to do. With all the good and bad, of course, involved in it. There was some, I guess, the usual Luddites, and I can't put it in any other shape or form. There were some people who started complaining about surveillance, and this was a way of the academy doing surveillance over the way they were teaching. Some people came up with, I don't want to be recorded. I will only deliver stuff online at the time, live, and so be it. So there was even some people saying, I don't want my students to share my videos on social media. So there was a period of really crazy adjustment going on for about a week. Aided by some real heroic, I guess, support from also the IT guys. Where we are now, I mean, I was telling you earlier, I mean, yesterday I was teaching 85 students online on Zoom, and we went on for about 2 hours. This morning, it's a holiday here where I am in Malta, and I still had 85% of my students tuned in. And I'm thinking that would never have happened, that it's a holiday. And okay, it's always interesting, but at the end of it, you say, you just put on your cameras, let's see where we all are. and that's when it hits you, where there's people in bed. So
Yeah.
just to take up your last point of the pastoral thing, how do you deal with it when we're all trying to find our own way of dealing with the pandemic? In my case, I have a 17-year-old son who went from about to sit exams here because he has an offer to go to a UK university subject to exams. Suddenly exams are postponed till September. What does that mean to his future? So I'm dealing with that crisis across another part of this house. But also I think we really have to be careful with young people who are literally very uncertain of what the future is going to be. So I guess, that was my 5 cents worth on this. I mean, I think we should look at Dell for All, though. I think from our first moment of how does this impact this project? And I know you and I both think that this is going to be the moment for Dell for All, really, because if you're talking about digital education, what used to be the alternative and inferior, I think it's going to become mainstream. So I'm just wondering what you think about that.
So I basically agree with you. And just to caveat, as we've had in previous discussions, that of course the current situation is very serious. It will have negative impacts for many people. I mean, very big personal impacts for some. But on the other hand, there is a big silver lining. We've already read, we read day to day about the drops in pollution level, the reflection that people have. And I agree that the global perception and the global use of online education will change. It's no longer a thing for people that are second class or for institutions that are second or third class. This is the mainstream technology that's been ignored for too long by educationalists. I think like any new media or any new technological innovation and its application, it makes one think about the activity from its first principles. So we all are incumbent to rethink what is it that we're trying to do in education, including in higher education. And I see it as you basically have the various stakeholders and actors. You have people who have certain expertise. So in universities, you have the academics that generate and disseminate knowledge somehow. You have others may be the same, that deliver that knowledge. They conduct live sessions somehow. You have the students that have a need they're trying to recreate the knowledge in their head. And then we have employers, and we have policymakers. And we can rethink the connections between them all, and what the pain points are, and what the opportunities and benefits are. And I think this rethinking you can rethink at a macro level, you can rethink at a micro level. So for example, you'll know that in all of your Zoom meetings and other collaboration meetings, what can happen is you pretty much always have a side channel in the chat room, which you cannot do in a face-to-face event.
Correct.
And sometimes that's even more interesting than the live conversation. This session is being recorded right now. The chat can be recorded. And again, there are different affordances that happen. Of course, you lose some things when you move online with respect to face-to-face, but there are some benefits. I have other things I've heard of, people looking at the recordings, but if you're short of time, you play them at 1.25 or 1.5 speed, or some part is a tricky concept, you replay that. And that's we're only talking about the most basic technology here. So if we bring in the other technologies looking at in Dell for All, such as blockchains, AI and AR and VR, then the opportunities are tremendous. So just other examples you can think of is think of all the data we're generating.
Yeah.
Well, how much online data are all the educators and all this generating? So that is a change, which would be lost to the ether previously. So
what I really like is when you were mentioning about, in a way, if you can get away from what seems to be the crisis of the bricks and mortar institution, and you start thinking of this ecosystem of stakeholders there, okay, from the learner, for me, the learner being at the center, okay, but then outside, extending that all the way to the world of employment, which, believe it or not, some people in the academy still look at it with some sort of suspicion. This is an ongoing, discussion in many areas, especially purists who are interested in a so-called adult education. I think when you start saying, okay, so there's the crisis which has happened, and how long is it going to take? Because that's the other ongoing thing. Okay, do we need to plan to do something radically different, or will this thing go away in 4 months? And I think nobody in his or her right mind thinks that the world is going to go back to what it was in 4 months' time. I don't think it will. I keep on thinking of, will I ever lecture to halls of, 150 people all crowded next to each other? I don't think that's going to happen. And yet we all knew that everybody has a device. So part of the challenges that we've had, this is the irony, the good thing, my challenge for the last couple of years, and I teach new media, within the attention economy that have, how do we navigate it? I've had to look at students who have used their laptops as shields or their phones as distraction machines. Suddenly, because we're in the zone online at the same time. So the dynamic has really changed suddenly. I really found it. And I think what you were mentioning about chat boxes, I used to use tools like Slido, for instance, so that I could even get people who are normally shy to ask a question or respond. Now I'm just using the chat box on Zoom, and people are suddenly finding their voice. So I think the whole notion of the class is going to change. I think it's being disrupted and significantly disrupted, I think. And I think Dell for All needs to address this. I think Dell for All now really needs to look at all of these other stakeholders. And then let's look at these emerging technologies, some of which are close to our heart, was blockchain and AI. And can we finally really put them to good use? You and I both have chatted about this, that we've seen blockchain as, some people look at it as very 2018, 2019. Yeah. In fact, now we should be looking at AI, because that's very 2020. And my feeling is in the same way that there was a wave of innovation when there was the first internet bubble burst, okay? And that's where all the social media stuff started kicking in. I think what's going to happen with these various blockchains and AIs now, as people are stuck at home and having to do this, I think we're going to see some real innovation now. And I think that's perhaps what Dell for All can start to facilitate, that those networks that we wanted to map as the people who are doing research projects and praxis projects, this makes everything much more urgent, I think.
Yeah, you hit upon a lot of big issues there, Alex. But I think there's this duty that we were talking about, that what's compelling us now. I feel an inbuilt duty for us to do something, and we're doing things in other areas. So with colleagues, we're looking at certification for COVID-19 immunity, for example. Now, given that the world is going to change, and so what would be a horror to me is we go back to the old world, and then when the next pandemic comes, we're in the same situation. So we need, as I've mentioned, this decentralized, resilient education model. And what does that mean? That means if your school or your university, whatever that is, can keep running, keep providing seamless education as your contexts change, working or not working, but also during a pandemic. So that would mean, for example, the availability of good online materials, the ability to share those materials. Of course, it's a crime that to any extent that there may be academics across Europe all literally reinventing the same course material instead of sharing them, which is what a waste that is. But also coping with maybe a quarter of your workforce is ill. Maybe if this is long-term, imagine if this goes on for a year. Okay, we'll need to hire new teachers. We'll need to flex. So for example, I guess it's the same in your country. We need a lot of nurses. We need a lot of nurses that know about ventilators. So I heard about a throat surgeon who's retrained as a nurse for ventilators at this particular time. And he was saying that in the UK NHS, they've produced very quickly some online materials. For example, how to run an operating theatre with COVID-19. How you do that. So ability of your teaching workforce to change, practitioners becoming teachers because they need to, how to generate materials very quickly, reuse materials, adapt materials. The fact that somehow everyone is a teacher. Again, in the NHS in the UK, the nurses are teaching others how to become nurses. Again, I don't know if it's the same in your country. The final year students in nursing and for GPs are now at the front phase. So again, that's issue. So this everything to do with agility and agility at scale. And again, you'll have the same. We need, I don't know, I think we have a vacancy anyway for 100,000 nurses. We'll need 30,000 ventilators. We have 8,000. And again, they will all need staff. We've just created a hospital in London, which can have 4,000 beds. That can be done quickly. Can we have the educated people there in time? Can we re-educate? So I think all of those, and I think the blockchain paradigm gives you this decentralization. So in the same way that the initial design for the internet did, back in the 70s as it's conceived, the internet was conceived to be a decentralized communications platform where it doesn't matter if certain nodes break, the system can keep coming on. And I think our education system should be the same. Can the whole system keep running, even if, for example, imagine if there's a pandemic in one particular city, or if it's locked down, can you keep running? And we can think about the use of AI, so automating some aspects, testing, assessing, automatically assessing free learning materials.
I think everything from the MOOC, which seemed to be dated, and people saying it's inferior, all the way to basics. I need to quickly know how to do something. And in the old days, and it was very frowned upon that you would go and look at a YouTube clip, because that's not real education, right? So suddenly the old bricks and mortar, education has had to think of this. And at the same time, I was trying to jot down some of the things he was saying, because for me, this decentralized, resilient model for education is really what Dell for All should be focusing on with the time that this project will run. This whole thing about speed and innovation. I'll give you one anecdote. There's somebody I know, and this is a tiny country, 450,000 people in Malta. He's an IT guy who's been running a little company called Easy Peasy Coding, I think it was called. And he's been teaching K-12s how to code. It's a very traditional, but with some resistance from various people as to, that's not real education. It's not really part of the curriculum. It's the same person who realized that you can use 3D printers to start to come up with shields, the face shields, because there weren't enough masks. And they're actually starting to produce these at the cost of €9.60, and they're going to be selling them for €10.
Wow.
The production has happened, and it's happening right now. Okay, and somebody said, I wasn't going to wait. I'm somebody's parent. And at the same time, offering to help teachers who had never been next to a computer, trying to get them to start to teach like that. So, and one of the things he told me, which has really resonated with me, he said, ironically, we've managed to do more in the last 2 weeks, people like you and I, than we've been trying to do for the last 5 years with all the resistance that we had. So I think that's the way we should be looking at this. And I think we should be looking across Europe and maybe across the pond for Dell for All, some of these people with an expertise in something, and it may be in unusual stuff. So yes, you and I are always going to be interested in the blockchain world and AI, but there are other people who are working sometimes at a lower level. So that's why I mentioned this 3D printing, that I think their contribution is going to be significant to a new type of education, I think, that we desperately need. And it's my view is it can't go back, because the pandemics will come back. There will be second waves. And at the same time, I am fearful as a parent of somebody who's 17, will my son be able to go to the university of his dreams? And he was nearly there. What's going to happen? Does it mean that in September, October, these bastions of universities are going to say, well, you know what, we're going to run the first 3 months online, for instance? Or will it mean that, you know what, you can still get a PhD done by not necessarily being here all the time? And this is my little secret. I've got a PhD from a UK university, but because I was a mature student when I did my PhD, I mean, how many times was at that UK university? 8,
right.
9 times over 3 years, and I've got a PhD cum laude, but I was already speaking to my supervisor like this. Once a week, we started once a week on Skype, and that's what we did. So for me, this is the norm. For you, this is the norm. For some other people, it's going to have to become the norm. Then I think the blockchains and the decentralization as a concept are things that we need to lever on to find maybe a better way of the way we've been going on with this business of teaching and learning. Because for many years, especially people in the employment sector has been saying there's an education which is not fit for purpose. We've been producing people, even if you think it's neoliberal, and maybe what this is going to be doing is the death of neoliberalism. That's one of the great things about the pandemic. I think there are opportunities. And so I'm personally feeling, well, from a personal level, nobody likes being in prison, and that's what we all are right now. I think it's the time we have to think sideways. So
I agree. It's a great time for reflecting, and I think this new norm is interesting. So all our worlds have just moved indoors, and the education systems today, for the most part, struggle to conform. But some have succeeded using standard technology. The best example I can think of course. All the school children are now indoors. So, in the UK, there's a body coach who has an Instagram type channel. He's now getting, I think, 1 million a month. He has 1 million new followers because he runs at 9 a.m. a fitness class for children. Fantastic. So all of these houses with parents going literally mad with these children with too much energy, all of them that I know, they joined Joe Wicks's PE class, and he has the right personality for this. And this is basically an individual person that's done this. In my university, some people are doing things like setting up citizen science experiments targeting children. We're making open courses freely available. We're making coding courses. But again, it's that type of resilience and agility that one needs for this world. And I also agree with you that many of the issues we were all facing were not technological, were just Luddite, still resistant. And again, that will go away. And as I've said before, education sector is a strange one, and I've worked in it all my life. But can you think of another sector where you would go to someone and say, like your engineer or doctor, and they'd say, "Hey, come to me because we've been doing it this way for the last 500 years, and I will use a 500-year-old method with you." So I don't think any other sector could get away with that. And now we have to face, okay, where online is a real thing, especially for the 18-year-olds coming to your university. How are you going to adapt to them? And as I said, I think you're right that in a sense this will reset the baseline in a number of ways. So the baseline
reset the business model, John. It's really going to reset the business model. Okay. Yeah. So what are those universities with empty halls going to do if people can't congregate in them?
Yeah.
And yet there are still people like my son, and I'm prepared to pay a lot of money so that he can have access to scholarship that he may not be able to find, not even outside his door now. So shouldn't we be looking at, reskilling people and getting them, because I think you hit the nail on the head. The problem has not really been the technology. The problem has been mindsets of policymakers. And I've seen this firsthand. I mean, as you know, I spent many years advising a minister for education who was one of the most, futuristic thinkers I ever met. Okay, but the resistance you would meet lower down with the various knowing nods of, we can't do that. Or else people very openly telling you, if you want to have change in education, we operate in 5-year cycles because that's how the curriculum works. And, and at the same time, and I found it because I'm somebody who was in the world of business before I dived into education late in my life. It is this sense of, what's the norm for the ivory tower of education and what's the norm for people outside, trying to convince some people that it's okay to deliver a lecture and it's okay for students to go then and, watch a couple of YouTube clips.
Yeah.
Because that's the way learning happens. Well, guess what? People are going to have to get used to it now. So I'm seeing opportunities at a very low level. So it's this wonderful example you mentioned about the guy waking up in the morning on Instagram and keeping kids fit. It's absolutely brilliant, And I think at the more sophisticated level, let's rethink what we can do with the blockchain. As you and I know, we both dabbled with blockchain and the certification on the blockchain. In my country, it's the norm. We don't think about the blockchain. It's what we do. Every single certificate, school certificate, it goes out and gets notarized on the blockchain. I think we're going to have to get a bit more sophisticated than that. Not talk about blockchains, but talk about education which is fit for purpose in the 21st century post-pandemic. So post the decentralized resilient model you're on about. And
I think, again, I think you're right. I think, so just in terms of opportunities for the Dell for All as a project and for the whole system, but what's happened now is geography, physical geography no longer exists. So, okay, what do we do with that? That means that a small example is the event we have in Malta. So instead of inviting, let's say 10 people maximum that we can afford to fly over, we instead invite 100.
Yeah.
You could have 100. I mean, it just limits on the time of interview. We could have 110-person session for a fraction of the price and more carbon neutral. You can also think about a school or a university. Okay, so you have a faculty. Well, why do you have a faculty? Oh, because those are the academics that we pay to come here physically and teach. Okay, but why did you do that? The student contact time is low. Okay, you have the research area as well. So then you don't, you can think about, people talk about virtual universities, others about Uber universities. IBM had a paper, they talked about meta universities. So you can still have human contact. People like your son, actually, and my 2 daughters, can pay a lot of money to have quality time with top academics, but that doesn't necessarily have to be face-to-face. And if you remove physical geography, then maybe you pay your £9,000 a year, you get access to 5 top academics. 3 of them are based with one institution, 2 of them happen to be on the other side of the globe. You still have a local tutor, who's paid, maybe they come. So there are many things you can do. And it's funny, I mean, the OU does this to a bit that when we write course materials, we do have external experts that we hire if you don't have expertise in-house. But, why is it all this time, every university is this physical located spot, and we only have, for the most part, input from the geographically co-located individuals? Again, that's madness, where we reinvent everything. So again, that removal of physical geography goes, plus of course, then you can think about automation. And again, this is a dream for all the data scientists and AI and machine learning people on the planet. with all the data we're capturing. You can imagine even fancier tools where you could, for example, do eye tracking. There are privacy concerns over all the students. Eye tracking for every single minute of every single lecture. And then machine learn over that. And then you could, in theory, build the super tutor.
Yes.
That can teach online better than any human.
Yes.
Because it's learned everything.
And somebody who understands your personal behavior. And this is going to take us into even more nuanced territory. As you know, I mean, with all the good and the bad. And that's where I think, again, Dell for All is really going to have a role because of the fear factor. You know, I've sat down with people who resisted the idea of online assessments because when we're trying to what's going to happen, right? Online assessments, exams, can you delay them forever? You know, and some people, and I remember trying to convince somebody, and I said, it's okay. You can have a kid sitting down and doing an examination paper if you still want to do the examination paper, which can land scanned on his or her. And by the way, and I was told, well, they would cheat. I would say, well, here's a webcam. By the way, you can look at my eyes, and that's it's me. There's nobody else like that. So that time has come, you know, from that basics. And I think our role, when I'm saying our role, our global, I think it's almost like this pastoral work we're going to have to do as educators who at least are not scared of technology, but want to put it to good public use. I think what Dell for All needs to do is assuming that, is the world going to go decentralized? I don't think it's got any other choice. Okay. Does it have to be a resilient system so people can trust? Yes, that's why you and I were interested in the blockchain and still are, I guess, all the immutability aspect of it all. And I think we go back to the drawing board, look at the stakeholders and start to look at solutions which are fit for purpose for the stakeholders. And for me, the stakeholders are anybody from, you know, your 6-year-old who has no idea as to what's happened in the pandemic, to people like our own kids who are, you know, at the cusp of, you know, I don't want to try and, I'm really trying very hard as a parent right now to convince my son that his future has not disappeared, but it's going to be different. And that the university he aspired to go to is going to have to change its ways if it is going to remain relevant in a post-pandemic world. Because if not, my feeling is it will be swept aside because the bricks and mortar might not matter that much. And that's the role that we have to play now, okay, to bridge between the interests of the stakeholders.
I completely agree. And I think you see this, you know, you see the world changing slowly and the opportunity. So in terms of the world changing slowly, Imperial, one of the top universities in the UK, their medical students will take their final exams online for the first time.
Yeah,
so that's them being pushed towards that. So of course, online examination. And I can see that there's a set of, it's almost that we'll have a set of opportunities and challenges.
Yeah.
So if we can solve certain challenges, and the opportunities are amazing. One is, as you said, online identity. If you solve that, then everyone can sit at home and it's really the person. Online assessment, I mean, it's happening, but if you solve that, then it's a killer. Automation, automating issuing of assessment, issuing of certification. If you crack that, then I know I spoke to the head of FutureLearn, the 4th largest MOOC company in the world. They said that that's the game changer. AI automated assessment on free learning platform. So again, like we were saying, you need to become a nurse. I need to become a nurse because of this pandemic.
Yes.
I'm going to learn and I will get a certificate from an AI, and then I'll be able to go into a hospital and fill in one of the 100,000 short places. So that's the key. That's the dream.
It's like becoming activists, isn't it? It's almost like, think of education as activism as well. But that's going to it's going to be painful for some. That's the way I'm seeing it. It's going to be painful for some. And I think those with a very institutional bent, it's going to take some time to adjust. Here I'm speaking about educators. I think it's going to be challenging for parents, again, who invest money in sending their kids to prime bricks and mortar universities like I was and still am prepared to do, because if you're sending a child from Malta to the UK for 3 years, I've worked out the numbers. It's significant. So at the same time, I'm going to say, okay, if it's going to go all online, should that still happen or not? I can see the downsides. What happens to old university life? Kids hanging around together, but that becomes an issue of what's going to happen in the world of social distancing. What our community is going to be like, and how the virtual communities maybe try and replicate some of that. So there are many, many issues that I think that we're going to have to be navigating. But it's all change. I think you and I know it's all change. And I know a hell of a lot of people who already, that the spark has gone up. The light bulb is there. I've seen an English language school, and we can probably tail off with some of this, that traditionally sees, and it's a multinational English, teaching English as a foreign language. They used to have 25,000 people would turn up in Malta in a 3-month period. That's all gone. That business has all gone. Today, I saw them announce that they've teamed up with Microsoft using Microsoft Classrooms, and they're moving their entire curriculum online and training all their teachers online, because clearly they want to secure that business. Now, that will not give the student the experience of a 16-year-old traveling for the first time. They might be German or Korean and going to a place like Malta or the UK or Australia or Canada and experiencing South Africa. The people are trying to think out of the box, and let's see what's going to happen. I think so I don't know whether in September we will be able to hold the conference in Malta as we said we do for Dell for All, but I think we might end up with something significantly larger. I think
so too. Yeah,
and
I think there's just the other element I would bring in, which both you and I will agree on, is the attitudinal stance. I think there's the attitudinal stance of the educators, of the policymakers and institutions, but also of the learners. And there'll be something we'll teach that, in a sense, and I've seen this when I've met very high-powered developers. In this world, you can really, any young kid can change the world from their bedroom in the world we live in. And then it's just conveying that the only limiting factor will be themselves. And, they have the screen in front of them and themselves, and you can do anything. And it's amazing that you can, whether it's coding or, as you say, activism, you can literally change the world without getting out of your armchair.
So in a way, that's it, really, isn't it? It's like, Dell for All has to be about this new decentralized education.
Yeah.
Some people, I don't know about you, I really don't want people now to be in the way, almost like, because of the pandemic. I really don't want to waste any more time when time is at a premium for people at our age or our parents' age. I really don't want to hear any more excuses anymore. Now I'm really focusing on what can be done. So in a way, yes, I'm becoming much more of an activist than I ever was. And by an activist, I don't necessarily mean let's go and wave the OER flag again and say we told you and we were right all the time. No, I think it's a question of how can we collaborate wherever these people who understand a bit about these technologies, how can we collaborate to come up with some solutions, because we need them. We need them. I just don't think, we've mainly talked about higher education today. I don't think that's going to be the way it used to be in places like the UK or even Malta, which only has, 2 universities and has free education. Because in the same way I told some colleagues today, can you imagine us being in October and I'm teaching a class of 100 again? It's not going to happen.
And we haven't even touched upon challenging contexts.
Yeah.
We haven't mentioned refugees. We haven't mentioned the most disadvantaged. So again, that's a whole other set of opportunities.
Yeah, so I think we should zero in on some of these things. I think so. If you're up for it, I'm up for doing a couple more of these chit chats, and I'm sure we can get some other people involved. And I think this should be part of what Dell for All should be doing this year. I think particularly as the pandemic goes through, and we hope everybody stays safe. But I think we need to not just plan. I think this idea of praxis, I mean, I'm really on the front line because I'm having to teach every week, and you're front line on the other side, and look at the research community and what's happening with all of that. Let's look for use case studies wherever they may be, and I think that's what we should be reaching out to the communities who have anything to do with education and technology around Europe and in the States. You know, I think we should try and find some people who want to come in and talk about this stuff, because I think we're going to find solutions in places that we don't even realize where those solutions may be, like this 3D printing that I was talking about, you know, and those are in production right now.
Yeah, but I mean, having you could almost imagine having a monthly chat, having a monthly armchair chat with whoever X a month,
whoever shows up, and whether it's 2-way, 3-way, or 4-way, I think we should do that. I mean, I'll make a short list. I know you will. I think we'll look at all the other colleagues we have in the project and extend that to our networks, and I think we'll come up with names.
Just another. So there's a final thing to notice. Someone said it in the meeting today, and I've noticed the world has become kinder. Yes, people are more so at different levels of granularity. So we're all in each other's homes. So I guess you have. I've been in many online meetings. You see someone's child or dog. Yeah,
cats, dogs,
and again,
brothers, sisters.
Because of the current situation, everyone's just being and keener to do the right thing.
Yeah, so I think that's what we should finish up with. I think we have to do the right thing, and we'll reposition, I think, this project. But digital education for all has never been more relevant than now, I think. And I think that's what we need to focus on. This project is now really relevant, and let's capitalize on that, and let's see whom else we can engage in these discussions anyway.